Famous people who passed away in 1773. Before we proceed, please subscribe to our channel to support us. John Wales. He was born in January 1715 and he died in May 1773. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a colonial American planter, slave trader, and lawyer in colonial Virginia. He is historically best known as the father-in-law of Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States. He was an influential figure in Virginia, known for his role in plantation economy. Philip Stanhope, 4th Earl of Chesterfield. He was born in September 1694 and he died in March 1773. His age was 78 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a British statesman, diplomat, man of letters, and an acclaimed wit of his time. He was a skilled diplomat and writer whose letters provided insight into 18th century aristocratic life. Alexis Piron. He was born in July 1689 and he died in January 1773. His age was 84 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a celebrated French poet and playwright, known for his wit and critical satire of society. His most intimate associates at this time were Mademoiselle Quinault, the actress, and her friend, Marie Thérèse Quinaudon. This lady was slightly older than Piron and not beautiful, but after 20 years' acquaintance, he married her in 1741. Philippe de la Beaupère. He was born in 1715 and he died in October 1773. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an 18th century French architect whose main commissions were from Carl Eugen, Duke of Württemberg. He was known for his contributions to European palatial architecture. Stephen Lake. He was born in April 1702 and he died in March 1773. His age was 70 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was gout and rheumatism. He was a numismatist and long-serving officer of arms at the College of Arms in London. He was a noted expert in coinage and medals, contributing significantly to the study of numismatics. Luigi Vanvitelli. He was born in May 1700 and he died in March 1773. His age was 72 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Italian architect and painter, the most prominent 18th century architect of Italy. He practiced a sober, classicizing, academic late Baroque style that made an easy transition to neoclassicism. He was renowned for designing the grandiose royal palace of Castara in Naples. Jacob von Eggers. He was born in December 1704 and he died in January 1773. His age was 68 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a military engineer and Swedish baron. He was born in German-speaking family in present-day Tartu, then known as Dorpat, in Russia-occupied Swedish Livonia, during the Great Northern War. Around the age of 4, he was deported together with his mother to Russia, where in 1713 she remarried a Swedish baron who was a prisoner of war there. Manuel Pinto de Fonseca. He was born in May 1681 and he died in January 1773. His age was 91 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Portuguese nobleman, the 68th Grand Master of the Order of St. John from 1741 until his death. He undertook many building projects, including the Baroque style, throughout Malta. The cost of these projects contributed to bankrupting the order in the decades following his death. His views were comparatively liberal. Peter van Reed van Oudtshoorn. He was born in July 1714 and he died in January 1773. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a senior official and governor designate of the Dutch Cape Colony. He was appointed governor of the Cape Colony in 1772 to succeed the deceased governor, but died at sea on his way to Cape Colony to take up his post. The western Cape town of Oudtshoorn is named after him. King Charles Emmanuel III of Sardinia. He was born in April 1701 and he died in February 1773. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Duke of Savoy, King of Sardinia, and ruler of the Savoyard states from his father's abdication on 3rd September 1730 until his death in 1773. He was a paternal grandfather of the last three mainline kings of Sardinia. He modernized Sardinia's military and expanded its territory during his reign. Sir Richard Glenn, 1st Baronet of Youghal. He was born in June 1711 and he died in January 1773. His age was 61 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a British banker and politician who, together with Joseph Ray and Thomas Halifax, founded the Bank of Ware, Glyn and Halifax, which evolved into Williams and Glyn's Bank. Ali Bey al-Kabir. He was born in 1728 and he died in May 1773. His age was 45 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was assassination. He was an Egyptian ruler who rose to prominence in 1768 when he rebelled against his Ottoman rulers, making the Egypt, islet of the Ottoman Empire, independent for a short time. His rule ended following the insubordination of his most trusted general, which led to his downfall and death. He led reforms to modernize Egypt, gaining independence from the Ottoman Empire before his untimely death. Urban Butler. He was born in October 1710 and he died in May 1773. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English Roman Catholic priest and hagiographer. He served as a guide on the Grand Tour to the nephews of the Earl of Shrewsbury. Upon his return in 1749, Butler was made chaplain to the Duke of Norfolk. He was appointed president of the English Seminary at Saint Omer in France. Jorge Juan y Santagilla. He was born in January 1713 and he died in June 1773. His age was 60 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was cerebral amoebic infection. He was a pioneering Spanish scientist, advancing geodesy and shipbuilding techniques. He is generally regarded as one of the most important scientific figures of the Enlightenment in Spain. As a military officer, he undertook sensitive diplomatic missions for the Spanish crown and contributed to the modernization and professionalization of the Spanish Navy. Francisco José Frere. He was born in January 1719 and he died in July 1773. His age was 54 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Portuguese historian and philologist and was born in Lisbon. He contributed to Portuguese cultural history with his studies in linguistics and historiography. Johann Joachim Quantz. He was born in January 1697 and he died in July 1773. His age was 76 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a German composer, flutist, and flute maker of the Baroque period. Much of his professional career was spent in the court of Frederick the Great. He composed hundreds of flute sonatas and concertos and wrote on playing flute, an influential treatise on flute performance. George Edwards. He was born in April 1694 and he died in July 1773. His age was 79 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English naturalist and ornithologist, known as the father of British ornithology, whose works documented birds and nature comprehensively. Axel Levian. He was born in November 1686 and he died in July 1733. His age was 86 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a count and Swedish knight of the Seraphim, commander of the Order of the Sword, and privy councillor. He was a volunteer in the Fortification Corps in 1702, got his main military education abroad, and in 1712 became Lieutenant Quartermaster General in the German provinces. Stanisław Konarski. He was born in September 1700 and he died in August 1773. His age was 72 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Polish pedagogue, educational reformer, political writer, poet, dramatist, piarist priest, and precursor of the Enlightenment in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Buakit Shuri. He was born in March 1702 and he died in August 1773. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an English harpsichord maker of Swiss origin. He was a master craftsman whose harpsichords gained fame for their quality and innovation. Francesco Zara. He was born in December 1710 and he died in August 1773. His age was 62 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Maltese painter who mainly painted religious works in the Neapolitan Baroque style. His works may be found in many churches around the Maltese Islands, as well as in some private collections and museums. He is considered to be the greatest painter from 18th century Malta. Enrique Flore. He was born in July 1702 and he died in August 1773. His age was 71 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Spanish historian and theologian who meticulously chronicled the ecclesiastical history of Spain. He was a good numismatist and published Medallas de las Cornellas in 2 volumes, 1757 and 1758, of which the 3rd volume appeared in 1773. Johann Ernst Gannerus. He was born in February 1718 and he died in September 1773. His age was 55 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a pioneer in Norwegian natural history, significantly advancing the study of local flora and fauna. He was a bishop of the Diocese of the Nidaros from 1758 until his death, and also a professor of theology at the University of Copenhagen. Septimani Degmo. She was born in March 1740 and she died in October 1773. Her age was 33 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was an influential patron of the arts, fostering cultural projects in the Netherlands and France. She hosted a salon which gathered the literary celebrities of the days, including Voltaire and Rousseau, and was a center of opposition to Madame du Barry. John Glass. He was born in October 1695 and he died in November 1773. His age was 78 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Scottish clergyman who started the Glassite church movement, advocating simpler Christian practices. Princess Anne Charlotte of Lorraine. She was born in May 1714 and she died in November 1773. Her age was 59 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a patron of religious and artistic endeavors. Known for her philanthropic works in Lorraine, she was the 13th of 14 children of Leopold, Duke of Lorraine. Her mother was a niece of Louis XV of France and sister of Philip II of Duke of Orleans and regent of France during the minority of King Louis XV. Friedrich Wilhelm von Seydlitz. He was born in February 1721 and he died in November 1773. His age was 52 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was a Prussian officer, lieutenant general, and among the greatest of the Prussian cavalry generals. He commanded one of the first hussar squadrons of the Frederick the Great's army and is credited with the development of the Prussian cavalry to its efficient level of performance in the 7 Years' War. John Hawkesworth. He was born in 1715 and he died in November 1773. His age was 58 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential editor and writer, known for compiling Captain Cook's Pacific exploration accounts. He was a close imitator of Johnson, both in style and thought, and was at one time on a very friendly terms with him. It is said that he presumed on his success and lost Johnson's friendship as early as 1756. James Fitzgerald, 1st Duke of Leinster. He was born in May 1722 and he died in November 1773. His age was 51 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an Anglo-Irish nobleman, soldier, and politician, remembered for his contributions to Irish politics and architecture. Bjarni Halldórsson. He was born in 1703 and he died in 1773. His age was 70 at the time of his death, and the reason for his death was undisclosed. He was an influential Icelandic legal scholar and poet, known for his contributions to Icelandic literature. He is best known for being county magistrate. Mantava. She was born in 1706 and she died in June 1773. Her age was 67 at the time of her death, and the reason for her death was undisclosed. She was a powerful regent, shaping Ethiopian politics and fostering art and architecture during her reign. She was a major political figure during the reigns of her son, the Emperor Ieyasu, and grandson Ayaz. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.